It is all kicking off today. Typical, the day I go back up north, over Hadrian's Wall for a couple of days, all the West Ham transfer news just blows up. Anyway, apparently, Tim Steidten has left the camp in America. He's gone back to Germany to try and get this deal for Füllkrug tied up. Aaron Wan-Bissaka isn't done yet. Apparently nothing's been agreed, but Man U and West Ham aren't too far away, but also Wan-Bissaka and West Ham aren't too far away. The delay there is supposedly that Wan-Bissaka knows in 12 months' time he's a free agent. He can really cash in on that. So it's a case of who out of West Ham and Man U compensate Wan-Bissaka for making a move now rather than holding out for 12 months' time. But the big news today is Somerville of Leeds United. Fabrizio Romano has done an update saying that personal terms have already been agreed between Somerville and West Ham. The bid went in last week. And to be honest with you, I've been guilty of taking some of this news with a pinch of salt. When the Somerville stuff came out last week, I thought, well, it's ambitious, but I can't really see us paying what Leeds United want. But all the big hitters are out in force this afternoon. Ex-employee, Dermesh, Fabrizio, and they're all saying the same thing, that we are well into talks with Leeds and that the deal could be done by the end of the week, over the next couple of days. So this would be exciting. And there's not only the Somerville one have I been guilty of taking it with a pinch of salt, the Füllkrug one as well. I've always been confident we'd sign Wan-Bissaka. Even when the Mazraoui deal was on the cards, I still had a little feeling it would be Wan-Bissaka we would end up with. But the Füllkrug one yesterday, when that came out, I thought, nah, this is definitely a little bit of a smoke and mirrors, trying to force Aston Villa's hand, because the updates were, when we were linked to Füllkrug, the updates were in regards to Aston Villa was that West Ham are walking away from Aston Villa, but the deal remains on the table. It doesn't sound like walking away to me. If you walk away, you take the deal with you. That offer that you made for Duran leaves as you do, but apparently it was still there for Aston Villa should they decide to change their mind. But it looks like they haven't, and that we are pushing on to try and get the Füllkrug one done. Now, it's not just me that's changing my tune. Plattenberg is also changing his. Yesterday, he was dismissing it, saying that Füllkrug didn't want to go to West Ham, that he wasn't really keen on leaving the Bundesliga, and if he did, it would be AC Milan he goes to. But today, he's now suggesting that actually it's not that far away between Dortmund and West Ham, and Füllkrug's maybe now open to the move. So it's still not done. That one isn't done yet, but it feels a lot more promising. And I have to be honest with you, I'm believing it today. Well, a hell of a lot more than yesterday, that's for sure, but I'm believing it today because of the reasons I said as to why I'd be okay with a Füllkrug signing, and that is if we use the funds elsewhere and it funds a substantial signing somewhere else in the squad. And I would class Somerville as that. Now, the price tags are what are a little bit vague at the minute. The Füllkrug one, I haven't really seen one. There's some reports saying that Dortmund want 25-30 million, which they're surely pissing in the wind for that. They can't get that. They shouldn't get that. I'd be very disappointed if we paid over 20 million for Füllkrug. I think 15 million is a fair fee. They paid just under that, I think, for him 12 months ago. So we can get him for the same price that Dortmund paid. I think that's fair on both clubs. Anything less than that, and I think we're starting to get the better of the deal there. But in terms of Somerville, it's been mentioned at around about 40 million. Now, I'm unsure it will take all 40. I think you might get him a little bit less, but it would certainly be over the 30 million pound mark. And if you've tuned into a lot of our videos, you'll know that I've always felt that the talk of 20 million yesterday was pie in the sky stuff. You were never getting him for that, and you shouldn't get him for that. Leeds United are under no pressure to sell whatsoever, so it's going to take a decent offer to get him out of Leeds United. In terms of the player, he's a good player, there's no doubt about that. I just feel like he's a little bit Benrahma-esque, and I'm not comparing ability. I think Somerville will go on to become a better player than what Saeed Benrahma was, but in regards to just the inconsistencies, that perhaps not turning up enough in games. I've seen a lot of Leeds United over the years, more so in the last few seasons. Even last year when they were in the Championship, I felt like they were on television quite a lot, so I've seen quite a bit of them, and there was a lot of games, and big games too, where I didn't feel he turned up. You're sort of waiting for him to do something, you know. Nonto himself and Ruttner in the middle of the two in the number 10 position, it could sometimes be a little bit underwhelming. Sometimes one or two of them would turn up, and it would be Somerville that perhaps wouldn't. But on the other hand, there was also Leeds United games I watched last season where he was the best player on the pitch and he made the difference. Plenty of goals and assists for Leeds United last season. So that would be the player that would sort of fill that left side position for us next season, and also Füllkrug could come in and go up front. I've seen some suggest that we'd get Füllkrug and Duran. I think that's a big no. I'd be surprised if that happened, and the reason being is because Füllkrug's good enough to come in and play. He's good enough to come in and be the main striker at West Ham. The issue is it's possibly only for 2 or 3 seasons, and then you're needing to replace him. So it's a short-term option, but it's a good and it's a strong short-term option, I think. But Duran, the only reason Duran was coming to West Ham United in the first place was to play first-team football, and that's the reason he's unhappy at Aston Villa. He's difficult to work with by all accounts, and I'm just going by what John McGinn said, Aston Villa's captain. He said that he's difficult to work with, so I'm willing to believe that, especially a captain saying it publicly. You've got to go, you don't do that off the back of one incident. You do that off the back of various other ones building up, where then you feel it's like pressure point to some extent. So I just don't see us signing Füllkrug and then getting Duran, because Duran would find himself in the same position he is at Villa Park, which is not the main guy up front. He might come in and put Füllkrug on the bench, but then you've got another upset striker in Füllkrug, and that's before you even take into account the fact that we can't move on Danny Ings, and Michail Antonio's here and he doesn't want to go anywhere either. Now obviously they both only got a year to go on their contract, but there's just, I'm going to say, no chance in hell next season we have Ings, Antonio, Füllkrug and Duran. In fact, I'm quite confident we won't have Duran and Füllkrug. Now obviously my predictions in terms of transfers in the last 24 hours haven't been great since I dismissed the Füllkrug one, and there is a little bit of me still cautious around believing. I believe the Somerville one. I do believe that we are in advanced talks with Leeds United for him in personal terms have done. I feel confident that that one could and probably will happen. But I don't know, I just wonder if we're still just going to go try and get Duran. But regardless of who we sign, this is some substantial spending from us. If we lowball these valuations on the 3 players and say 15 for Wan-Bissaka, we say 15 for Füllkrug, and we say 35 for Somerville, that's 65 million added into Kilman, that's 105 added into Guilherme, that would take up to 125. There's an extra 5 million of add-ons. You add in Fodringham, it remains 125 million, but that's some substantial spending from us this summer. I'd be surprised if there's much money left in the kitty, if any. Obviously we have a desire to get another centre back, but I think that depends on Zuma or Agurd going first and foremost, and this is where maybe we'll get a little bit creative in the transfer window and try and get somebody in on loan in another position that would allow us to free people up. I think this would maybe spell the end for Maxwell Cuddy, which, you know, he's the one player that's disappointed me the most in pre-season, and I think it's just because I had big hopes for him. I just wanted to see him sort of redeem himself and put himself in Lopetegui's plans, and that certainly hasn't happened. So that's the latest news, and that's my latest thoughts on everything that's going on, really. It looks like we could, by the end of the week, we could have Wan-Bissaka, Somerville and Füllkrug. That would be good in terms of preparation for, you know, Aston Villa in a couple of weeks' time. I doubt any of them would be involved against Crystal Palace, I think, but certainly against Celta Vigo I'd expect to see all 3 should they sign prior to that, and it would be good, because in the last couple of weeks I'll know this, I've got a little bit jittery in terms of hoping something would happen, and it hasn't. It just feels like, I wouldn't say dragging on, but I'm getting a bit impatient. I've been a lot more patient than others in the comment section, but there's still a lot of other people chilled out as well. But to get one of these signings over the line this week or next week would be really good, even if it's just Somerville and Wan-Bissaka. I think you can get away with the first couple of games of the season without signing a striker and doing it towards the end of the window if we have to. Maybe that's what the thing is here. Maybe we need to get the Aston Villa game over and done with before they sell us Duran, but I just don't see that being too big a barrier, because there's ways you can get around it. You can do a gentleman's agreement. While it's frowned upon, it happens in football. You could, if you really want to play silly buggers, you could do a loan with an obligation to buy him and just buy him after the Aston Villa game. So obviously we can't use him against Aston Villa because he's on loan, can't play against his parent club, but then we sign him after the game and he becomes a permanent transfer. So there's ways around that barrier, so I just don't see that one being as the big reasons why we can't get Duran done. I think it just comes down to the valuation of 40 million. What will be interesting though is, if Leeds are wanting 40 million for Somerville, are we willing to spend on him but not Duran? Are we prioritising Somerville over Duran? That's the one thing I'm unsure on, because I feel like Duran's always been the #1 priority for the last couple of weeks. We've just been unable to get it done. Anyway, I'm going to promote Patreon in the next couple of minutes, so if you don't want to hear that, now's the time to disappear. But before you do, please drop a like on the video by clicking thumbs up and subscribing to Ham's Chat. And for those of you that don't mind sticking around for the next 1 minute, as I do my best to persuade you to join Patreon, would you give Ham's Chat £3.60 a month in order to keep watching videos on YouTube for free? If the answer is yes, then please do consider subscribing to Patreon. And today is the last day that you can sign up and be entered into the draw for that match-worn Jared Bowen shirt. He wore it against Liverpool at the London Stadium last season, and he scored wearing it as well. I know some people will say, but we don't need to join Patreon to watch YouTube. But if we took the Patreon away, we wouldn't be able to create videos on YouTube as much as we do. It's as simple as that. So if you do, if you would consider joining, please go to patreon.com/HamChat. Links in the description below. And I should say, if you join today, the old way of Patreon, you got charged on the 1st of the month every month, regardless of when you joined prior. So if you join today, you get charged again tomorrow. That doesn't happen anymore. You join today, the next time you get charged will be the 31st of August. They just do it a month from when you joined. It changed a little while ago. Before we used to promote Patreon at the start of the month, and we wouldn't promote it at the end because we felt it was bad value. But this is why we now promote it throughout the month, more spaced out, because it doesn't matter when you join. Anyway, thank you very much for joining me. Get your thoughts into the comments below, and I will catch up with you later. I'm back up in Aberdeen for a couple of days. I've got a gig tonight, but after the concert, I will be in the comment section seeing what you're all saying regarding Somerville, Füllkrug and Wan-Bissaka. I'll catch you then.